Greetings, it's Brewday and we're going to be making an all-grain IPA of the most basic kind. So first of all, we have 5.8 kilograms of pale malt, and we have about 220 grams of crystal malt, and last night I toasted some oatmeal just for a bit of mouthfeel and head consistency. And in here we have getting up to mashing temperature, it's about 76 degrees, some lovely Scottish water. In other parts of the world I've seen all kinds of hideous chemicals being added to stabilise pH and things, but fortunately with lovely soft Scottish water all we have to do is drop in a Camden tablet. We'll get rid of any excess chlorine that may be in there. So I'm just going to wait for that to get up to mashing temperature, and then I shall come back and dump the whole load in. And I'm back, and through the wonders of modern technology I've managed to MacGyver my phone into sticking to the window, so hopefully we get a better view of what's going on here. The water's sitting at about 74 degrees, it's called the strike point. The idea is that once I dump this huge pile of room temperature grain into it, it should balance out at about 67 degrees, which is more or less what we want, because what we want to do is to activate the enzymes in this to turn the starches into sugar, which we can then ferment and turn into marvellous, delicious beer. What I should say is that, like any other hobby, you'll see that you can make it as complicated as you like, and in fact people do tend to make it incredibly complicated. And that works for them, and that's fantastic, and I'm sure they make delicious beer by using the more complex routes. Personally, 20 years of brewing tells me I like to keep it simple, and I don't really care so much about the statistics and the calculations and the incredibly complex, pants on your head, one leg up while sparging type thing here, and hopefully not overflow all over the place, because it's a kind of big grain bill. So, here we go. A little bit about this, blindingly useful device in that it doubles as a mash tun and as a boiler. It's basically just a big kettle. There's a kettle element in the bottom, the thermostat on it. Stick a grain bag in there, hangs down to about here just above the element. It basically allows you to do a single step mash, run it off back in the top, and then boil it in the same vessel. I'm sure you do get slightly better results with a dedicated mashing bin, because obviously one thing that does strike me is that the element down here is going to potentially caramelise some of the sugars and give you a kind of light caramely taste. I haven't noticed anything excessive there, so I'm quite happy to do it like this. What I'm doing here is just breaking up the grains to make sure I don't have any little dough balls, making sure that as much of the grain is in contact with the water as is humanly possible. And so far we're looking good. I'm not seeing any big clumps as such. Just move it around here. Smells good. If you have a significant other who inhabits the same domicile as you, you may find that you're sent into the back garden to do this, particularly the boiling phase where you're sticking lots and lots of hops in there, because it can get a little bit smelly and humid. But Now, I'm going to take another temperature reading, just make sure that it's where I expect it to be. About 67 is good. Basically the role of the human in this endeavour is to lift heavy things and pour things and heat things up. It's the enzymes that do all the work for the mash, and then it's the yeast that does all the work for fermentation. The human involvement is minimal, we just get to drink it. This is the slowest thermometer known to mankind. You'll hear the thermostat's kicked back in again. I've got it set to kind of hover around about the 65 mark, which should be about right, plus or minus a couple of degrees. I have it in good authority that these spent grains you can make into cookies. Haven't tried it, could do that. Yeah, so we're sitting at 65, which is great. We are going to leave that sitting at 65 for about 75 minutes, just giving it a stir every now and again. I'm going to cover it. So I shall return 75 minutes time and see what happens next. And here we are again, new stage, new camera angle, where hopefully you can see what's going on. What we need to do now is separate, as well as possible, the wort from the grain that's there. I'm going to do it quite slowly. I'm going to catch the first run-ins in a separate pot so I can run them back through, because this grain bed will form a fairly efficient filter. So let's just grab the first chunk. Got our boiler turned off now. Obviously don't want it running while we're lowering the level or it'll get too hot. There's our first running. It's cloudy and full of all kinds of hideous gunk, but you know, a lot of that will go into the first fermentation and be taken down by the yeast down to the bottom, so it's not something to worry about really. I'm just going to leave that to run off. At this stage you can give it a wee taste and you know, you can get a good idea of how successful your mash has been by the sweetness. This is very sweet. So now that the level is coming back down, I'm going to start running some of this through. It just helps to collect some of the gunk that's maybe down the bottom of the vessel. I should say that what we're doing at this point is we're basically making the contents of the can you get if you buy a kit. You know, we're now going to boil this up and hop it, and then when we're finished that and it's cooled down, we're ready to put your yeast. Basically, that's the same operation as heating up your cans, diluting it, and there you go. There is nothing wrong with using a kit. We're using pre-prepared malt extract. You probably get slightly better results that way. I like doing from grain because I can customise it to my own tastes. I can make the beer I want to drink. You don't necessarily get any better results. You certainly get more flexibility, but that's about it. There is no shame in using a kit. I've made more than a few in my time. I just enjoy doing this. It's the whole kind of tactile thing, the smell of it and all the rest of it. So I'm going to leave that running off now, and then I'm going to do a massive amount of clear up and then get this malt extract back into the boiler and get it boiling, and I will see you then. The more observant among you will have noticed that I was in fact talking rubbish there, because that's not what I'm going to do next. What I'm going to do next is sparge. And what that basically means is I'm going to run some hot, not boiling, but very hot water through it, just to collect any sugars that are still clinging to the grains. So I have here some boiling water, well, hot water I prepared earlier. There are a lot of ways to do this. If you're using a kind of custom-made insulated mash tun, you can batch sparge it. That means you just pour in lots of hot water and mix it all around. This is kind of fly sparging because I'm doing it on the fly while it's still running off, as it were. You can even get little spinny arms that sit on the top of your boiler and kind of put gentle trickles down. And I'm sure the more intensive than me hobbyist has a whole myriad of equipment for doing this. I have done it in the past myself. It works well, and I'm just not a huge fan of the faff, and I'm not convinced that it makes a significant difference. When I start producing undrinkable beer, then I'll look at my methods, but until then I'm happy with brute force. Anyway, I'm going to continue sparging and come back once I'm boiling. And we're back again, and we're not boiling yet, but we're getting there. Some awesome things happen at this point. First off, we should get a protein break fairly early on. Oh, I got a text. Which means that the proteins that have been carried in from the grain will start breaking, frothing up like mad, so we have our amazing proton deflecting water spray which will frantically squirt to stop it boiling over, because a boil over is a thing that you really don't want to happen because it really isn't nice. That helps with the clarity of the beer. There is a corresponding cold break you can do, whereby once you've done your boil, you stick in a huge coil of copper, dump it in there, run cold water through it from the tap, and that brings down the temperature quickly, and you get a second protein break on the way down. I don't currently have a tap which I can fit a wort chiller to, so I don't bother, frankly. It's largely a cosmetic thing. It helps with the clarity of the beer. There are other things you can do. I tend to put some Irish moss in the last 15 minutes. I also tend to add some gelatin to the secondary fermentation, and that clears it up fine. You don't expect homebrew to be crystal clear like the beers you bottle, for the simple reason that the technology that's used to actually get things that clear just isn't available to us home brewers. I don't know if you can see that from there, but I'm getting some floaty whiteness appearing, which is protein. And once these all start to coagulate, they tend to froth up fairly quickly, so for the duration of the boil you really can't leave it alone. As I said, boilovers, not good. Superheated malt and sugar spewing all over the place like a volcano of beery goodness. It might sound nice, it's really not. There's not a lot to do here except wait. What I have here is 28 grams of Golding's hops, which will be getting dunked in here right at the start of the boil. And then I have another 28 grams of East Kent Goldings. It's the same thing but slightly sweeter, which will go in for aroma right at the end. Because this is an IPA, it's also going to be dry hopped, which you won't see because that will be after it's been in the fermenter for a week or so. Basically, dry hopping is just sticking the hops in a bag, putting the bag in the fermenter while it's still actively fermenting. Generally leave it in there for about 7 days. Legend has it that this was done to enable the pale ale to survive the sea voyage to India. I don't know if that's true or not, because they were shipping porters as well, and that got there fine. I think somebody at a brewery just thought, hang on, what if we put like shitloads of hops in? That would be delicious, and they did, and it was, so it stuck. So who knows? But anyway, what I'll be doing today is doing the boil, getting it into the fermentation vessel, and then I'll just leave it to cool naturally overnight. Pitch the yeast tomorrow morning. About 5 days later I'll dry hop it. About a week after that I'll put it into secondary, where it will sit for probably a couple of weeks before I decide if I'm going to keg it or bottle it. I'm probably going to keg it because, you know, pale ale's nice on tap. And that'll be about it. We're starting to get a slight rise in temperature here, and I've got a lot of protein on the top. I shall watch it intently. I'm hoping that you're actually going to catch the hot break on video, because it is very cool. I shall return momentarily. Okay, we have some gentle boiling type motion happening here, which means our hot break is probably imminent. I've got loads of froth on the top. Can you see that? I think you can. Armed with gun. This happens really, really quickly, and then it's done. You want to have some windows open when you're doing this, because we're going to produce a hell of a lot of steam. Another reason why any significant others let punt you out to the man cave or the back garden or something. There we go, we're boiling now. You want a really, really active boil. You want it to be, you know, getting down and boogieing, as it were. Here we go. There really is nothing to this. It's like you heat it up and then you chuck some yeast in. Well, if you can see, I'm getting lots of bubbles forming, as well as now big chunky slabs of protein floating on the top. You want to keep the boil as energetic as possible. You don't want it any further than maybe 4/5 of the way up, because you do need quite a bit of headroom, because it can get quite enthusiastic. As you're about to see, here's our hot break happening. All of a sudden, huge amounts of bubbles. It's a kind of magical thing though, because once the hot break actually occurs, the proteins all coagulate and just sink straight down to the bottom, convection currents allowing. So all of a sudden you have a nice clear headspace there. And it's creeping up the vessel. I'm sure you can see that. Squish! Calms it right down. It's just water that's in it. You probably noticed there's not been an awful lot of sterilisation happening here. And that's because we're boiling boiling it to within an inch of its life. So it's going into the fermentation vessel sterile. As long as that's been cleaned and sterilised, you're fine. Eek! Go away, nasty bubbles. Desist. This is a good thing, makes for clear beer. Ish. Malty goodness. Only lasts a couple of minutes, and then it calms right down. You still want a really vigorous boil going for your hop additions. And you do want to keep it going for a good hour as well. And obviously you can't leave it alone in that time. Otherwise you're going to have a hell of a mess to clean up. Of course, nothing ever happens while you're watching it, but, you know, sod's law. I only have one window open here because my phone's stuck to the other one, so it may get a bit foggy. Hopefully not. I should have brought my banjo, I could play a song while I'm doing it. Come on, proteins, break, damn you. Oh, it's getting keen. Really got to be careful with this because it's very hot, it's very sticky. You get really deep burns off this. Not speaking from experience because I'm a very careful bunny. Of course, now that I'm filming it. That honking nasal voice you can hear in the background is the news. I left the TV on stupidly. And someone moaning about the weather. I mean, it's Scotland, come on. You don't moan about the weather in Scotland, you just kind of accept it with an air of, you know, resigned indignation. One thing to be aware of is when we add the hops, we'll get another wee froth of manicness. You've got to be prepared for that because that can be quite spectacular as well. Might be tempted to cover this while it's boiling. Do not, or at most half cover it, because during the boil you're giving off kind of fusel oils and things which they're not pleasant to have in your beer. You can get a nasty kind of medicinal taste from them, and they contribute significant amounts to your hangover. So, you know, try and let the top open. Just to get rid of any nasties that may be lurking in there. The good thing about doing it this way is you know exactly what's in there to start with. So, you know, that's one advantage of going to the hassle of doing it from grain. We're probably going to boil off a couple of litres of this to do it, but that's fine because, I mean, you know, you'll have an idea of what you want your starting gravity to be before you begin. Once you've got it in the fermenter, you can just top it up with boiling water until you get to your desired gravity or your desired amount, and you know you're sorted. So boil away at your heart's content. As you can see, it's getting quite enthusiastic. Or can you see? Let's check here. You can't see very much, can you? Oh well. I can. Well, we've got a good rolling boil here, which means that the last of the protein is going to drop out any second, and then we can hop. Yeah, we're pretty much there. Right, that's the foamy over bit hopefully done for now. You've got to keep an eye on it, and if it does start to froth up again for whatever reason, get the temperature down right away. My usual technique of hopping is to tie the bag to the side of the bin, thusly, chuck it over the edge away from the heating element, badunk, and then stab it to death with a paddle to make sure it sinks, because they're a bugger to actually get to sink, these bags. So that's our first hop addition. We want to leave that in there for the whole of the boil. We're going to be doing a bit more hopping and Irish mossing at the last 15 minutes. So I shall come back then. Of course, I've got to stand and do this for 45 minutes. You just get to sit there and like, bang, it's like that. Okay, I shall return. Yet another camera angle. This is so you can see what a vigorous boil looks like. You want to keep it, more text. You want to keep it rolling like that for the duration, as long as you can. And we're back again for the continuing saga. You see the levels dropped quite a lot. I'm going to put in, first of all, our Irish moss. This is amazing stuff. It's a type of seaweed. God knows what possessed someone to add it to their beer initially, but it helps to drop more proteins out of the wort and aids with clarification. I'm going to put 2 in because I did put in some oatmeal, which does tend to cloud things up a lot because it's got loads of proteins in it. So there we go, 2 teaspoons Irish moss. And we're going to chuck our second hop bag in. See, this is really simple, foolproof. You'd have to try really, really hard to screw this up in any way, just because the ingredients kind of make themselves, really. So there goes our second hop addition, once it eventually sinks. Full of beer, go in, sink down here, sink. Ah, my glasses are steaming up. There, we're in. So we're going to leave this for 15 minutes, just to finish off, and then get the heat off. Let it cool a few degrees, let the wort calm, and then anything that's going to drop down to the bottom will get a chance to do so because the convection currents will go away. Don't be stingy. When you're coming to run off into the fermentation vessel, that last inch is going to be full of all kinds of nasty yuck, coagulated proteins and little bits of grain that have come through the bag. You don't need to get that last inch out. It's half a pint of beer, it doesn't matter. You can make it out with water anyway. And it'll just give you a cleaner primary. I mean, when you do it in primary, the yeast rising to the top will actually lift up a lot of the gunk anyway. So it's not going to end up in your finished beer. But, having your wort as clear as possible is never a bad thing. So I'm going to leave this for another 15 minutes. Then I'm going to run it off into the fermenter, top up to about 21 litres with boiling water, which should give me my starting gravity of about 1.048, which I'll check tomorrow and update on the video notes. And then once it's down to temperature, we can pitch in the yeast and get it going. As I said before, I'll be adding 50 grams of Fuggles about 5 days into the primary ferment, just to get that IPA taste. Then a week after that I'll be putting in secondary, 2 weeks, and then I'm probably going to keg it. And that's it. It's a lot more involved and faffy. I mean, if you were making from a kit or from extract, then what I produce from here is going to be the same as you softening your tin, pouring it in, adding water, and you're done. If you want the ease of hassle, then that's great. You're going to get good, consistent results. You can extra hop it. You can dry hop a great malt kit. There's no problem there. If you want to muck about doing it the messy way like this, then you know it's very, very difficult to actually do anything wrong. I mean, I've been brewing for about 20 years, and I don't think I have once produced something that was undrinkable. Not always the nicest beer, but always drinkable. These days, getting pretty consistent results. I did actually make up a Cooper's IPA tin kit about 6 months ago, and it was great. I mean, the kits have really come along. There is no shame in using them. I just like doing it this way because I like to know exactly what's in there. I like to make recipes which I know I like, but that's all there is to it. There's no benefits other than the control. So I hope you found this video helpful. I don't think you need to see me draining it off into a fermenting vessel. You know, there's nothing even remotely interesting happening there. But I shall update and let you know how it's doing. And I hope you found it interesting anyway. Bye bye.